The Liberty Weekly Podcast, Episode 5.
Political correctness is not about being nice. Okay, it's not simply a social issue. It's not a subset of the culture wars. It's not about politeness or inclusiveness or etiquette. It's not about being respectful towards your fellow humans or about being sensitive or caring or avoiding hurt feelings and unpleasant slurs. It's not about any of these things, despite, of course, what our progressive friends insist PC is really about. If PC was about kindness and respect, it wouldn't need to be imposed on us. Does anybody here really believe that our PC culture, aggressively secular, dominated by empty pop music and derivative, crass TV and music, movies, mindless social media, produces virtually no important literature to speak of? Does anyone here really believe that our culture is nicer than that of our decidedly non-PC grandparents? Of course not. The PC in the West is not nice, and neither are its enforcers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Liberty Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Pat McFarlane, and joining me, as always, is the co-host, Jerry McCullum.
Thank you.
So today we are going to have an episode that is Thoughtcrime Thursdays based. If you hadn't noticed, I did not release a Thoughtcrime Thursdays for the past 2 weeks because we've been so busy launching the podcast and figuring out how the different platforms work that I just didn't have time to write any articles, actually. But before we get started here, I just want to welcome any Tom Woods Show listeners that have decided to check out the podcast from a mention that he did on a recent show. We really hope that you enjoy the show. I'd just like to let everyone know that we really intend to keep going with this and to grow the show. And we're really excited about the prospects of doing that. And we'd like to welcome you aboard. So without further ado, I want to hand the show off quick to the co-host Jerry to introduce a story that's been going around the cities.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, to nail down the thing that the dystopic fiction that we're relating to, I'm going to be discussing things that relate to a particular idea in Fahrenheit 451, and what the particular idea was that in that universe, the choice to start the choice was made by the populace to start burning books, and it was the choice of the public to get rid of all these things, these disagreeable opinions that they had within literature. And I remember when I read this, I unfortunately haven't read this in quite a while, but when I read it in middle school, I remember thinking, like, no, that I don't buy it. I don't think that could happen, because at that time I was thinking of book burning as being something that was done by Nazis, something done by like the Maoist regime, and so it was something that dictators chose to get rid of all this literature in order to control their populace. And I wasn't thinking that it was something that could be done grassroots in middle school. Now I totally get it, and I totally believe it. And what made me start thinking about this was a story that my current roommate told me about, and we'll link the article that I'm referencing in the show notes below. But there is in the city that we live in, there is a piece of art that was going to be part of a sculpture garden for for a museum here, and it's called Scaffold, and it's supposed to reference a mass hanging of 38 Dakota men.
That took place in Mankato, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's Mankato.
In 1862, and a lot of people didn't like this. They wanted to get rid of it. They thought it brought back trauma. They didn't want to see this piece of art being constructed. So it has been taken down, and it's going to be taken away and burned. And at the time, I kind of was like, not. I didn't think that much of it, but my roommate, who is someone who really he spends a lot of time thinking about art, and he thinks art is very important. He was kind of freaking out because it was like, this is someone's piece of art that's being destroyed. This person is being censored by the public, and that made me start thinking about Fahrenheit 451 again, because this is an example. It's not burning of a book, but it's a piece of art that is being destroyed at the behest of the public. And while there are no rights being violated here, this is not something that I could say is evil. It's something that I definitely am against, and I think it's a dangerous precedent to start. And there are a lot of other movements in society nowadays that have this same theme of the public, not a government, but the public trying to censor ideas or censor certain opinions. And I think that's really concerning, and I want to talk about today.
Wait, so before you get into the article, I just wanted to ask, when you say no one's rights are being violated, how did they come about burning it? The museum
deigned
to let it be burned.
I don't think, I may be mistaken, but it doesn't look like it wasn't an arsonist. They decided that we're not going to put it up, and that we're going to. I think my roommate made it sound like it was going to be burned in like a pyre, and it was going to be a big deal. But it from this, it kind of sounds like it's just going to be taken away and destroyed. Instead of being put in a landfill, it's going to be burned. But I don't know for certain. What I think is important is the fact that it's the community rallied against it, and they decided to get rid of this piece of art because they found it to be offensive. And that's something that concerns me. And it's something that is, my naive self in middle school didn't believe would be a thing. But now the sentiment is something that very much exists and is alive and well within a community that I would call maybe the far left. But it's a community that would include groups like Antifa and people like that. They're groups that are not interested in allowing others to express themselves freely. And in some cases, they just they try to limit their speech in nonviolent ways. In other cases, especially with Antifa, they try to do it in violent ways by, coming to protests to attack individuals. Those sort of things. And it's just when I started learning that this was a thing, like, it really got me really surprised, and because it seems so backwards, and it's something that I think nowadays everyone is quite familiar with it. But at least personally, like a couple of years ago, before Antifa became like something that showed up in the news often in the United States, I kind of thought of oppression as being something that only came from the state. And I don't think that's the case. It's something that the populace can, in a vigilante kind of manner, also manifest.
In a kind of French Revolutionary sentiment.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe with some parallels to the Southern Monuments question too, with what's going on in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. If you're versed on that,
you are far more versed than I am.
Oh, okay. To recap, the mayor of Louisiana the mayor of New Orleans is on this campaign to get rid of all these Southern monuments throughout the city that are beloved by a lot of people, and obviously a lot of people don't like it as well. And so they've been doing that, and it's been like in quick succession. They're just tearing these monuments down and carting them off.
Are they being relocated, or are they being destroyed?
No, I think I don't know if they said they were going to put them in a museum, but there was a picture taken of them sitting by a scrapyard. Yeah. And so it's Robert E. Lee. There's one of Jefferson Davis, and those figures too.
And no matter what you think about them, if they're good people or not, this is a destruction of art, and it's an erasure of history. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, this is personal opinion here, but I would rather see something, have a monument to, even if originally it was created in celebration of something, I'd rather, if we now see it as something distasteful, to keep it there and to remember it as something that was undesirable. Because what I see with the removal and it sounds like destruction of these monuments, instead of it's allowing the past to be forgotten.
Yeah. Or it's at best it's allowing the past to be forgotten. At worst it's a systematic elimination of certain strains of thought.
Yeah.
I guess it more so with the Southern monuments because they say slavery, but if you go and read the monuments themselves, it's in commemoration of the cause of small government and of the men who died, fighting in the war.
They're war memorials.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and so to whitewash that or to
to simplify the nuance of the Civil War to be, or the War of Northern Aggression, to being something that it was just they had slaves and we didn't want them to have slaves is
it's a gross misrepresentation. But with the parallels to your story, what was the intent of the artist?
That I'm not entirely sure, because I would assume that this. I was thinking that if anything, it would be to let that not be forgotten, like to let this mass hanging not be something that is forgotten. Because I didn't know that mass hanging happened. Before this, and now I know about from this controversy. But if this scaffold was something that specifically was referencing that would remind a lot of people of the terrible things that were done to the Native Americans in this country.
Yeah, so you'd think the SJWs would like that, or
you would think, but I don't believe this is sort of this is a speculation here, but I don't believe the person who created Sam Durant is Native American. Let's see. Let me check.
Yeah, while you're doing that, it reminds me of, obviously it's provocative, there's a scaffold here, and you're evoking that kind of imagery, but it's no less provocative than Kathy Griffin holding a severed head of the president,
Yeah, this is a little bit tangential, and this is something that I've seen you post on your Twitter page, but if you're gonna stand behind a controversial and evocative joke, don't back down.
Yeah, go big or go home.
Go big or home. Yeah, it's because what you're doing when you're backing down like that is you're setting an example and a reference of what is not okay or what is too far, and I don't like that. I think that there is no such thing as going too far. There's no such thing as a distasteful joke is all in the eyes of the beholder. And having a really big creating some, now we know that it's not okay for an artist to do this, to have to imply a murdering of a president, and that's really unfortunate, because I wish that people felt like they're open to do that if they thought it would make an important statement.
Yeah, obviously not to kill anyone.
Yeah, of course. Of course, we're against the initiations of violence, but that's just a depiction of it. That's just fine.
Yes, yeah. And actually, violent depictions of the president is not new. In fact, GWAR, the famous metal band, has been doing that for years and years. Oderus Urungus is dead now, but back in the day, I know he had a politician where they mutilated
an effigy of George Bush.
An effigy of Bush and Obama and the Clintons, I think.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and it was... So, you found that link, though?
Yeah. So, the artist who created this is white, and this, of course, I don't know for certain if this would be the way it is, but I would believe that if he was Native American, that this would not be something that would be creating outrage amongst that community, which is... it doesn't paint them in a good light, but I do, my opinion, for whatever that's worth, I think that this wouldn't be a big deal if he was Native American, because I just did some reading. This piece of art, it explicitly is supposed to call back to that mass hanging. It is supposed to be something to remind people of the hangings the executions that have happened within the United States, or because of the United States.
Yeah, I think that double standard does exist, or would exist, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, because it's this is meant to be something that is sympathetic to Native Americans.
Yeah, but if you don't do it the right way.
But if you don't do it the right way, yeah. It's something kind of in cultures that are interested, sorry, not, maybe culture isn't the right term, but in communities that are interested in censoring opinions, and they're meant to, they're interested in, they've got a particular viewpoint. They don't want people to have things be disagree with. I've noticed a culture of them like, I guess I would call like them eating each other, is that they'll call each other out, and it's not in the sense of like, hey, you're being hypocritical, and that, you know, you should own up for that. And, you know, it's not saying that someone, it's not an invitation for criticism and for
correction.
For correction, it's something to out you as someone who has sinned and needs to be. I mean, maybe this is a bit hyperbolic, but I see it as someone who, it's like, you have done something offensive, you have done something that is terrible, and you have sinned because of that, and now you need to repent. You have to make a public apology, or you have to talk about how terrible the things that you were doing. And that's something that I think I really don't like, and something that I guess I don't know for certain, but if I was ever in a situation like that, I think I would refuse to do that. I don't know. Maybe I think highly of myself.
Yeah.
But
well, they're trying to put you into line, or it's like purging the regime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's done by it's done in a grassroots way. It's not
top down.
It's not an individual dictating it. And I know that there's a lot of people who talk about cultural Marxism and how it's something, you know, in how it's there's a lot of institutions that are funded by the government that support those ideas. And while I agree that is something that exists, and it is something that influences a lot of people's opinions, it's different than an oligarch saying, this is how everything should be, this is the way something should. It is different when the populace has at least the populace creates this idea and really runs with it. And that's different than an oligarch dictating what is wrong or bad.
Yeah, kind of like that French Revolution idea, the mob rule.
Yeah, where they, you know, similarly in French Revolution, like they ate themselves. Like the initial leaders of the French Revolution were all executed by the end of it, by the revolution.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I was mentioning on the last podcast that I don't know as much as I should about the French Revolution.
Neither do I, but I know for sure that the initial leader, and this is also something that happened in the Bolshevik Revolution too, where the initial leaders of that revolution that began it were then executed by it as being, I'm not sure what terms they would use, but counter-revolutionary, as being people who weren't extreme enough, or being people who were in bed with the enemy.
Purging the regime.
It would be purging counter-revolutionary influence within the revolution.
Yeah. But to get back to Fahrenheit 451, it's my favorite book, or one of my favorites, and I think something from a libertarian perspective that's unique about it is that it's not a critique. It's a dystopian novel, but it's not a critique, or it's not written from the point of view of a libertarian. Because I don't think Ray Bradbury was a libertarian.
I don't know for sure, but you know, like at least the main character is kind of Guy Montag is very much like an everyman.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Yeah, and then he meets this girl who shocks him. The girl red pills him essentially to draw that comparison.
God damn it.
But I love it, and especially I think it's a critique on consumerism in the mass media in a sense.
Yeah, so it at least from the reading that I did to remind myself about the novel is that at least Ray Bradbury particularly was worrisome of mass media and of media that's very easy to consume, because within Fahrenheit 451, like comics are still around, and so it kind of shows that he sort of has this like old world. I mean not old world, but like there's a sense of like elitism about like, oh, like novels and literature is supreme and better and more controversial and more thought-provoking than television or video can be. And that's a sentiment in there that I very much disagree with.
I'm sympathetic to that.
Yeah.
I don't, well, in a certain sense, I think it's a shame. I think that people don't read as much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In the sense, in getting to that, I mean, maybe my sense of reading would be like, okay, you need to read Hoppe, you need to read Mises and Rothbard. You know what? Or people should read books that make them think.
Oh
in my
yeah,
opinion.
but I mean, I work in a retail environment, and we've got a small book section in our store, and I work in a department store, and quite a lot of it is not anything particularly thought-provoking. A lot of it, like, there actually is a large fraction, like I would say probably like a fourth of the books that we have are obviously and explicitly like paperback romance novels.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with that. You could enjoy that, like that's just a form of media, but that is not something that is meant to be thought-provoking. It's meant to titillate, and that's okay. But just because it's a book does not mean it's profound.
Yeah, that's a good point. So to develop my strain of thought, I mean, I would be of the opinion that you should read things that are thought-provoking, and that like high culture for me is literature or novels like that. But I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that you can have a simple media or form of media like a YouTube video that could be just as interactive or high culture as a
and
treatise or a book.
I guess to begin with, I would probably object to even the idea of sort of there being a high culture. I think that's something completely subjective. But there are absolutely things that are it's subjective, but, and I'll admit that it's kind of a hypocritical thing to say, but there are works that are harder to consume, that are controversial, that have influenced a lot of people's decisions and actions and beliefs. So there are things that are more important, which I guess we could refer to as high culture, but I kind of don't. I personally don't really like that idea. I just remember there was a particular German philosopher. I don't remember his name. I apologize, audience. But he had this idea of culture with it was German, so it was a capital K, and it was
Kultur.
And he had this idea of there being like this culture as like this is a particular, like, this is something that's noble and good, and this culture is what we want. He actually had a pretty positive view of mass media, because his idea was that mass media at its best would bring people to culture. And so culture wasn't this amorphous thing that changed over time. Culture was an objective thing, that it was objectively good, and that he wanted to bring people to it. And that's just incredibly bougie and elitist.
Yeah. And I was going to say that, I guess, with there's a qualifier that if you're saying there's high culture, there's the implication that it's something for elites, or something, for a specific class, or that should be a party who dictates what the culture is.
Or that it is, and that it is better, and then what there's some people could read into it saying that, on the other hand, the low culture is something that isn't worth considering, and that it's something that's lesser. And I shirk away from that. But getting back to what we were talking about, I would say that there, across any form of media, there is a cross section of what we're referring to right now as low culture and high culture, across each form. So there absolutely are things that there are books that are easy to consume, are not thought-provoking, and then there are books that are on the opposite of that. There's also comics that are thought-provoking and interesting, and then there are comics that are not. And similarly, there are YouTube videos, there is news, there is film, like Transformers versus Schindler's List, And so I think that there probably, you can say that certain medias have a higher concentration of more thought-provoking and influential works, especially since books have such a long past to them. Literature has been around for so long, while nowadays it's I don't remember when I forgot the exact date that film became a thing, but you can only look back like 100 years as opposed to probably like 500 or 400 years for literature. And of course, over that period of time, people are going to forget about the works that weren't influential and weren't important. So I do think that there's a greater concentration of thought-provoking and greater things in literature, but I think there's definitely a lot of riffraff.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think back to the novel of what kind of media was in the film. Like, what kind of media was the Montague's wife consuming?
It was I don't.
Well, I remember that there were
Parlor walls
in that you would interact with it by, you would play a role within in the book. You would play a role in the movie in the book.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
You're sitting in the parlor and you have a script and the walls interact with you. And so then there was another part with the wife has what he calls a seashell, which is so prophetic because but she has headphones on as she's sleeping, and it's constantly, whispering in her ear as she's sleeping.
I know, and it's funny because I know a lot of people who go to bed listening to podcasts or music or whatnot.
I do.
Yeah.
And I seriously, it's very hard for me to fall asleep without either reading or watching something. I can't shut my brain off. But yeah, it seemed in the film that there was the implication that this was low culture or
yeah, that's what I think Ray thought.
Yeah, or as well with the reality TV shows, because at the end of the book you get Montague he's running from the mechanical police hound dog, and he sees everyone is watching him on TV, and it seems like everyone is plugged in because it's like cops. Oh yeah, and they have a video feed. And it's so maybe that's a prophetic critique on reality TV.
Possibly. I see how I think about it is it's sort of like the breaking news, like the very second coverage of like a tragedy. Like if it's oh man, I just think of a meme in my head. I apologize, but can't corner the Dorner. There was wasn't there was I know that like there a couple of years ago there was someone who like a mass shooter held himself up in a building, and so there was like live coverage, like people like listening to like police radios and stuff like that, and like helicopters like filming it and that sort of thing, and that's what it made me think of, and less so much reality TV, because reality TV is heavily edited and there's very little reality in it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're at least from what I understand, usually there is kind of a script. There's an idea that like this is what's going to happen, and I know that purposefully drama is created within those situations. This is we're getting real off topic here, but something that I thought was really interesting is that a year or two ago, the company that there was this is pretty off topic, but something I think is really neat. There is I believe it was Maker Studio, which is it's a YouTube affiliate company that is actually owned by Disney, but they wanted to create a reality TV show that was kind of like a game jam idea. The idea of it is that you would have popular indie developers and popular YouTube creators who would come together to work to make a particular game. So like the creator would, the YouTube person would like have some ideas, and like the indie dev would try to like create them into the game. And there was actually the game, like this idea completely fell apart on like the first day of filming, because the person who they brought in from Mountain Dew to try to give it more spice, to make it more interesting, was purposefully putting the two people in this contest who hated each other the most in the same team to create drama. And that didn't work out, and then they actually ended up walking off the set. They were just like, we're not doing this, and they left. Which, I mean, good to them, I guess. Those that's ballsy. And this thing never came to be. But this is just an example of, I'll post a link to this in the show notes, of how reality TV shows purposefully are made to create drama.
Oh yeah, they're all scripted. Would it be fair to say the reality TV craze is coming to a close, perhaps? Because I mean, I haven't heard much about stuff like
I think so, but at the same time, I do not watch TV.
Yeah, I don't either. I think people in general are moving more towards the internet and YouTube. And
Yeah,
it's an exciting time to be alive.
and I mean, there's also reality TV on YouTube, but
That's true.
yeah, I didn't have a TV in my house for like a year and a half. You know, like I had a computer, and so I just watched it on my computer. But I just watched things on my computer. But I've never, I've never paid for cable or anything like that. I actually didn't have cable when I was growing up. That's how much of a outside of the mainstream I am.
Can I
Grew
ask?
up without cable. Yeah.
Can I ask? Are your parents hippies, or were they?
My mother, yes. My dad, I don't think so, but he's sympathetic to it. My dad's actually pretty straight edge, I guess, to use a more modern term.
Oh, okay, yeah.
His views are pretty close to, would be agreeable with that. I need to, whenever I talk about that period of time with them, it's always really neat. Like whenever my dad talks about a lot of the religious communities that were around at that time that were popping
that's
up.
so interesting.
That's
well, this kind of ties into, I mean, the period of the 60s and that time. I'm not trying to date your parents. I don't know if that was the time.
Yeah, around that time, I think.
So, but when it comes to Ray Bradbury and all of the science fiction that was coming out during that time, I don't think Ray Bradbury was a hippie, though.
I don't know for sure, but this is probably something that we could very easily find out by looking up.
Yeah. But one thing that strikes me though is that when I was first taught Fahrenheit 451 in high school, sophomore year.
Yeah. Was it like required reading?
Yes. Yep. And my teacher was a hippie, or an old hippie, and she was playing "Turn, Turn, Turn." What is that song? Everything has a season. Turn, turn. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I definitely can think it in my head.
Yeah.
But she was playing that.
Yeah, and I never realized the weight of Fahrenheit 451 because I hated it when she taught it. I mean,
oh yeah,
just like, and then little did I know I'd become an English major later on.
Required reading is a great way to make you despise reading.
Yeah,
unfortunately. I'm trying to think. I'm lucky. I guess everything that I recall reading in high school, I actually enjoyed, which is kind of weird. I sort of had a realization when I was in college that I had a really strong sense of Stockholm syndrome when it came to high school, because elementary school and middle school were not enjoyable. And it wasn't, I know that usually you hear about people being like bullied and stuff in middle school. Like that wasn't the situation that I was in. But I just remember that the lack of I guess you could say like the lack of freedom that I felt in middle school was pretty great. And when I went to high school, it was great, like comparatively, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. And then later when I was in college and then I was becoming like sympathetic to anarchism and to peaceful parenting and that sort of stuff, I kind of had the realization that like, God, no, like high school was terrible. Like that really wasn't like, it wasn't as bad as middle school, but that still was a pretty awful time to, force me to go to this place, to most of the time do things and be with people that I don't enjoy.
Especially when you're on another level than a lot of people. And I don't mean to say that condescendingly, but I mean, some people are just not into engaging in the subject matter on the level that, well, I'm speaking from my own experience, like especially in English class. And I think a lot of my teachers hated me because I realized all the time that you waste in high school.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a busy freaking person. Like everything that we've done or learned today, I could have done in like 3 hours in the morning. If you condense all the BS that you have to sit through and the time wasting in high school, you could do all your classes in 3 hours. And that was my point.
Mm-hmm. I know that my sister was very disruptive in school before she went to like an advanced program. And then she was engaged and was no longer being unruly. I personally, I never was disruptive, but I definitely was bored. In a lot of schooling.
How big was the community you grew up in?
150,000. I think this is what it was right now. Maybe it was 100,000.
Wow.
When I
Is
grew
that
up.
Sioux Falls?
Sioux Falls, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But the school was, I'm trying to remember, there was like about 1,000. Oh, God, I don't remember these numbers at all, but it seemed pretty big. Seemed big enough.
Yeah, I mean, my graduation size was 160 something.
Definitely more than that. I think it was like
Yeah.
I think it was like 300.
But the town itself is about 4,000 people where I went to high school.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I like my hometown. I didn't like high school, at the time because I think it negatively affected my performance because I will not do anything. I mean, I'm a voluntarist. I hate authority,
Yeah.
whenever anyone tells me what to do, it's just like, screw you.
I actually think that my rebelliousness, or my not rebellious, my part of my anti-authoritarian sentiment, I think came about because of my dad, and this is something that he told me about. But this is funny because my dad is very much, I would say central liberal, and he when he was a kid, when I was growing up, and he was like reading books to us, he would do things like hold the book upside down. And then we would be like, no, Dad, that's the wrong way. You have to flip it out. And so he told me that he explicitly made sure that it was clear to us that we could correct authority, and that we could, show him that, like, we knew that he was like playing around with us, but that he could do something wrong, and then we could show him how to do it correctly. And so I just think of that, and I'm like, good job, Dad. Now your kid's, anarchist scum. Like, look what happened. He wants to dissolve all forms of government around you. Like, look at what terrible thing you created.
That's so funny because, I think because my parents were a little more, I mean, they're your straight Republican pretty much. I mean, not like I've said before, not like against, they're more liberal on social issues, but I mean, when it comes to personal responsibility and everything. But I think they really don't understand the anarchist thing. And I don't know how to show them.
Yeah.
Maybe this podcast was or part of it. But
there are 2,000 people right now in my high school, so I think it was probably like 1,500.
Oh, okay,
back then. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I presented the ideas to them, and then I kind of stopped there, to be honest.
Yeah,
I don't hide my political beliefs from them at all. And it's something that always, like, in a sense, comes up whenever I'm around them. I'm always like, I'm doing this because I'm an anarchist, and I don't try to make a big deal out of it or anything like that, but it's not something that's hidden in any way.
Yeah. See, I'm such a loudmouth about it. I'm always telling people, like,
I used to be much more of I used to be a lot more evangelical.
Yeah.
And now I've toned down. I've heard that that's something that's actually pretty common, is that, because when, this is our red pill, you could say, is like when you suddenly realize that the state is inherently violent and it has no justification for existing. For me, I was like,
let's shout it from the mountaintop.
Because I was introduced to it in a sense, like, very casually. It wasn't like a here is the great truth, and like here is something like huge to be learned. I sort of like stumbled upon it, and then found people who were making this content, and then I was like, whoa, no, this is actually right. And I was like, friends, countrymen, like everyone, this is like, look at what an outrageous situation we're in. And then everyone else was just like, what? No, you're silly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, heartbreak.
Yeah, and I think it does break because it's very hard not to attach your identity to these ideas. Yeah. At least for me. I don't know about you.
I don't know. I think I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I won't. Well,
I think it's unhealthy to do so. Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. It is unhealthy, and I will admit that I'm more attached than I should be. I don't think that I'm like really attached.
Yeah.
But that's
it's part of what I'm trying to channel, at least in my own sense of why I made the podcast. It's I'm trying to channel it into something creative instead of antagonizing my friends and family with it. Because I'm always thinking it's so much of what I am now, and what I think about and what I'm working towards, that I want it to be creative and not an annoyance.
Oh yeah.
And I think maybe a lot of people like us, maybe in our listenership, I hope, will commiserate with us in this.
I nowadays, like before this, I was someone who is a lot more quiet about it, and you could say sort of like stewed in my beliefs. Like my roommate is an anarchist, and I will proudly say that that's my fault.
Yeah, or even with us in the case of us meeting and being friends.
Yeah. But he's not interested in me, like pontificating and complaining about how terrible government is. He's like, yeah, you're right. That's where we talked about this and we agree now.
Yeah, and it's in a certain sense, it's hard to, at least for me, to stay positive about life with knowing these things and knowing how terrible like the government is and what they do and the interest behind it. And I guess I'm looking for positivity.
Yeah. I don't know. What keeps me positive is the acknowledgement that right now, despite all the terrible things, that are going on,
it's the best time to be alive.
It's the best time to be alive. I would not choose to have been born any sooner. If anything, I'm assuming here, but if anything, I would choose to be born later in time, because I'm expecting that 10, 15 years from now, the world's going to be even neater and more interesting, and you'll be able to get pleasure from it a lot easier.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I'd love to be born in the 60s and grow up during the 80s, because I just love the culture, and I think I'd miss out, on a lot of the cool stuff we have today, but damn. I mean, some good music and just a lot of,
I don't know. See,
that would be my one exception.
Yeah. Like how I'm thinking about it is like, man, it would really suck to grow up not having a computer.
Yeah, that's true.
And now I'm thinking like, man, if I was born now, like there wasn't a time when there weren't cell phones. Like I would like, I don't know. And that sounds kind of like, I think a lot of people are critical of things like cell phones and computers now because they sort of feel it as something that waters people down. But I wish that I had greater and more access and like a better access to the internet when I was younger, because there is especially now, because there is so much that you can learn out there.
Yeah.
And the situation that I was in, I mean, I didn't go searching out for a lot of learning, I'll admit. But when I was young, it was difficult to, we had a rather poor internet connection. We had a rather poor computer to use, and it was tedious to use the internet, and that was unfortunate. And I would just think it would be super great to like have what I have now, but as a kid. And I know that I would be wasting a significant amount of time, but I also would be, I think, becoming more informed. I think I would have learned a lot more over that period of time.
Yeah. And I bet you there's some maybe people that are older than us listening to this podcast and laughing and being like, oh, you guys are so, idealistic young kids, and this is kind of changing the subject a little bit, or going back to my parents and like the anarchism thing. And like, I think that at a certain age, your mind cannot be freed. Like to relate to the Matrix, or to make that analogy. Like, but I think that's so true. Like at a certain point, you are so reliant upon, the state and the current paradigm that you are unwilling, cognitive dissonance. You are unwilling to see things because it's threatening to see things a different way.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if there's like a particular age, but I think it's something that, I don't think it's an age. I think it's something that comes with age, is that, at least I know as you get older, like, I know the age that we're in, or like the age a couple years before us, that's a time where hormonally we're supposed to be rebellious. Like we're supposed to get kicked out of the house. Like it actually, I think, is really neat. Like our pheromones will change so that we find, we find, like, our parents will find that we like smell disgusting, and they'll want. I think it's particularly, I think maybe it's just men, but I think that like young adults, I think I'm assuming like 16 and older their pheromones will change to be something that's repulsive to their parents, to encourage them to get like kicked out of the house.
That's hilarious.
So they can go out and seek adventure and, go do something ridiculous and silly in order to attract a mate. So I do think hormonally, because of this time period, that there's a lot of, for lack of a better term, political awakenings that happen, or a lot of people who radically change their beliefs during this time. But I also think that just, as you get older, that you start to cement the world around you and like the people that you're with, that suddenly changing what you believe in and fundamentally who you are is something that it becomes a lot more dangerous and a lot more disruptive to your way of life. Like specifically, like with like religious institutions, like they're a community, and it's very difficult to become someone who no longer believes those things, because oftentimes you have to leave that community as well. Just because, like, why would you, if you don't believe anything that the preacher is saying, why are you going to be going to church? Unless, it's you're not supposed to go to church if you fundamentally disagree with what's being said there. But there's a lot of those people that, you probably still want to be friends with. And that's something that's pretty hard. I am not upset or mad in any way that my parents don't believe the things that I believe. I accept it, and I'm not gonna worry about it.
I think part of who I am, there's this inherent desire to be correct, or to have the right opinion or view on things, and that's maybe unhealthy, but something I'm working on. But I was just going to say that, like, so when you realize inherently that the state is an evil and shouldn't exist, there's no going back, in a sense. Maybe there is.
Maybe. What I see more often is people they won't switch their belief in the legitimacy of the state. They'll switch their beliefs in like the legitimacy of like private property and that sort of thing. So I've seen a lot more people flip-flop between anarcho-communism and anarcho-capitalism than people flipping to anarchism and then flipping back.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't think, because when I very early in my discovery of this kind of stuff, I was curious about the other ANCOM like philosophies and Trotskyism, and I didn't like do much looking into it, but I was very cognizant of finding people within the libertarian community that specifically go through and debunk it.
Yeah.
And the Mises Institute is good for that, but they have one that's like a Mises boot camp. And one of the first videos, and I'll link in the show notes page, is a guy saying like, okay, this is how we determine price theory, like subjectivity.
Yeah.
And he's saying like, so I went through and I read the Communist Manifesto just to see what it said, and and he said, I got to page 2 or 3 when I found some major errors. And he went through it and was talking about it specifically. And I was like, okay, yeah. Like, and so I have this rule, and I know we've discussed this before, but I have this rule that if anyone legitimately believes in the labor theory of value, they're not worth talking to.
they're a bit too far gone. I mean, I would challenge them on their belief of the labor theory of value, but if they're like very firm in their belief, then I think that's because those are people who may casually believe it. They may be like, yeah, I read it once and like, yeah, but if someone's like, no, like I'm for sure, I've heard criticisms of the labor theory of value, and I still think that it's true, then that is something that I agree that they're, you're probably wasting your time.
Yeah. And specifically, I'm thinking about there's someone in law school who is the anti-Pat. And we talked about this off the mic, but I had to bring it up because he is a Trotskyist. I don't want to straw man him, but he's a Trotskyist syndicalist, I think. And he was talking about, we ran into each other at the library, and he was talking about money with another mutual friend, and saying that, we don't need money, and money is a tool of slavery that the state uses to and that the Sumerian kings invented money so that they could be paid taxes or something like that, and that taxes or exchanges could be done in like your product of like, say, corn he used as an example. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like, do you honestly believe this? Like, where in history was it ever like posited, or where in history did a king invent money? Mm-hmm. Like, when was money invented? Like, no, it came about as a natural market process.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are times when like a leader has, or well, when you say invented money, as in like the idea of it was created for the first time. Because for sure, there absolutely are kings who will be like, and now who will create a mint as part of their rulership.
I mean,
but like the invention of money, like the invention of like a bow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And I was just, I mean, I think what he confuses is the state's desire to control money. He confuses that desire and that what they actually have done with, the state inventing money. But and I declined to argue with him because I had just worked 7 hours on a paper and he was studying for the bar, and I was like, I don't want to. And he's a very obtuse person to argue with because he assumes he's, there's no other way to, like, he states things as fact.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and I was thinking specifically of the concentration camp example where money just came about.
Oh yeah. What is this something that we've talked about before yet?
I think in episode 1 or something.
Yeah, but and even in federal prison, like this is something that I think it's something that Larkin Rose has talked about when he had I think he described it as his spiritual retreat within a federal prison.
What was he arrested for?
Tax evasion.
Oh, okay.
Or it was specifically, he said specifically he didn't send certain pieces of paper to the mafia.
Yeah, the mafia.
Yeah. Or something
the protection racket that is the government. Think about it for a second.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And his plan, I believe, was to try to use like jury nullification to or something like that to
like
defend himself. Yeah,
okay.
That's what I believe, because he was talking, like, he was looking at like a specific kind of law. There was like a specific law that he was like he was referencing. He was trying to use to
that sounds
himself.
like jury nullification to me.
It was
or appealing to the jury's sense
to the jury, because it wasn't he wasn't saying that like, jury, don't jail me because he wasn't trying to convince the jury that what happened was immoral. He was trying to convince the jury that the law did not uphold what was going on, and it was kind of looking at like the minutia of a law and saying
legislative purpose.
Yeah, and it was saying like if you look at this means that the government does not have the right to levy taxes. There's nowhere in the law that says that the government has the right to levy taxes or something like that. I believe,
like the direct income tax. And I think that's what Irwin Shipp was saying too, is that he was making a constitutional argument against the income tax or something.
Yeah, I think if you look at his channel, you'll be able to find. I think it's referencing like 861. I think something like that.
Yeah.
But within that community, there was it was food packets and postage stamps that were used as the money there, and it like that just happened. That is a situation where you're not allowed to have private property. You can get constantly searched and have your property seized from you, and any kind of trade or barter is explicitly forbidden, and it still happens.
Yeah,
and that's the power of the market.
Yeah, and just the absurdity of the anti-Pat and his, No, and I'm assuming that he has absolutely no concept of the utility of money and how it's something that is useful. And Battery just disagrees with it for some obtuse reason.
Maybe I don't. Yeah, but money is great. Money.
Well, let's talk about
a very important tool.
Okay, so a definition of money is a medium of exchange that satisfies the double coincidence of wants. Correct?
But go for our listeners. Explain the double coincidence.
Okay, so I do have a. If you want to follow along with this, I have a money. What is money? The basic series. So the double coincidence of wants is basically the problem where, so if you're in a barter economy, as the anti-Pat would posit,
the best economy, as he would posit.
Yeah, as he would posit, is that, so say that you have corn and someone else has bison or something, and you want a bison, but he doesn't want corn. So there's no transaction that takes place unless you, I don't know.
And unless you trade to get this corn, and then you trade with the corn with someone else to get something that you do want.
Yes, and I guess he was saying that you could work around this, and I say, well, not efficiently.
Yeah, you definitely can, and people have, but nowhere nearly as efficiently as something like money.
Yeah, and so money came about because, like, it has intrinsic value. Good money has intrinsic value, which means like people want it for a reason. And that's why gold makes such good money, because gold has always been used for technology, for jewelry, for status.
Yep.
And another reason why gold is good money is because it's durable. It's easy to carry. So all these things make good money. But another function that money has, and this is what I said to him, was, you need it for economic calculation. And in the sense of like, okay, say that you have a business, without money, there's no way to calculate where your goods are going and what is, earning you money and what's losing you money.
Or it's significantly difficult because you'd have to convert it into some, you'd have to know like how much is a buckskin worth, like how many sheep can I get for a buckskin, or how many how many rifle rounds can I get for a buckskin, and then that would be the most efficient way that I could think of to do an economic calculation with a barter economy.
Yeah.
Would be to kind of convert it into one unit and then compare it through that.
And I don't know. He was talking. He said something about like frontiersmen, or I don't know. I don't want to straw man him. That's why I'm like reaching for this. But it was just ridiculous. And how do you it's not worth arguing with him about, because I mean,
I guess if you're if you're into the sport of arguing,
well, yes, but he's so obtuse that I just don't want to, know.
I don't know. It's like
I know I'm not going to convince him.
Yeah.
And at the time, I really I know what's the point.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong in declining to engage in an argument, especially in a situation where you're like, I've had a long day. Like, I don't need to deal with
Well,
this.
he was studying for the bar, and I was like, dude, why do you want to talk about this right now? Well, because that's his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the sport of an argument or debate can be a lot of fun, and also the person that he was with could be possibly influenced by what you're saying. Like the purpose of having like a public debate isn't really for either of the debaters to be convinced. I don't expect
it's for the audience.
It's for the audience, like, because those two people are supposed to be like the pinnacles of their opinion. They're supposed to have the arguments worked, like really figured out. They're supposed to explain it really well. Like, they're supposed to know it forward and back. And so they're probably not going there. It's going to be a lot harder for them to change their mind, most likely, because they theoretically should at least know the opinions of the other person.
Yeah.
The person they're going to be debating with. But yeah, no, I think it would be really interesting to hear what you'd have to say, to be honest.
I mean, yeah. So maybe I don't know.
See if you can get him on the podcast.
Oh no, I don't know if I would subject the audience, because, like I said, he is very matter of fact and very like. Even we met for beers one night, and my wife was with, and she was like, sometimes I think my wife gets a little not fed up with the whole libertarian, because she's not evolved. Well, she won't commit to labels.
Yeah.
She describes, maybe she's a minarchist. Okay, whatever. Yeah. But she said, like, I could not listen to him talk. And I mean, she's listened to me talk about it. Yeah. And she's like, it's not, yeah.
You're like, I'm really annoying, so this guy must just be like another level.
It must. So thanks everyone for listening to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
But I hope that our audience is a little more engaged. Or obviously you're listening because you're a voluntaryist, or you're curious about these ideas, or interested,
or
in some level.
Or maybe you enjoy. Maybe in your mind you're tearing apart all of our arguments in your head.
Or maybe
in some way we engage you.
Yes. Or maybe what's most likely is that you're another voluntarist or, I don't know, an agorist, and you're criticizing our ideas.
Yeah.
In which case, let yourself be known, please.
Yeah. We've got an email. We got email addresses in the show notes.
Yes, we do. So I guess this is a good ending point then, because we've strayed a little bit from the...
Quite a bit.
Yeah, but that's okay. I hope that you guys found the contents of this episode to be interesting. Certainly, we do, I guess.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun for us.
So I'd like to, before we go, just say again that you can find us on iTunes now, Stitcher. We just got approved to BitChute, I think, this last weekend. So iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music. We're on YouTube, BitChute, Steemit. I mean, we're all over the place now. So, but I got to plug that email list again. It really is the best way to keep up with our content. I've been scheming about how to do a certain topic of interest special emails for whoever's on the list. So you get some more of those thoughts here. So, but thanks again for listening. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.